Well, the 24th of May every year here in New Zealand, because, I know that there's a lot of people that are watching Serious Country around the world. Kiwis know this day very well, in particular rural Kiwis. It marks a day in 1882, the very first frozen shipment of our lamb left New Zealand shores. We have certainly come a long way from Britain's back paddock, sending over and selling our frozen carcasses in Hessian sacks and marketing, auctioning them off on top of apple boxes in markets in London. Now, this month, marketed to 1.3 million Instagram followers on a internationally renowned chef's Instagram page. We certainly have come a long way to showcase New Zealand lamb at an absolute premium. Our next guest knows a thing or two about presenting lamb for sale. He's a beef and lamb platinum ambassador chef, Michael Coughlin, based in Dunedin. Welcome to Sarah's Country. I'm very, very excited to have you on the show, Michael, because I know that we both share an affinity to a very, very special place in New Zealand.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sarah. And yes, we do. We do.
And that is Central Otago, of course, where I met Michael. We've done some filming over the years and his time up in Central. Now you're in Dunedin, back in Dunedin, and can you just give us a bit of an understanding first about your sort of chef history and career leading to this, and what your role is for Beef and Lamb as a chef ambassador?
Yeah, well, over the last, I've been a chef for 38 years. I started off in the army up in Waiouru there when I was actually just a cadet in the army, and basically that's been my career right throughout. Over those years, I owned a number of restaurants, opened up a number of restaurants and within hotels. And during that time, I've had this real passion for red meat. Worked and done a lot with beef and lamb, also venison for that as well. And over the last few years, I did quite a bit of work as a consultant with Silverfern Farm, working with Celia Merino and various other cuts, development of certain beef cuts as well. So I could sort of feel my career starting to make a little bit of a side turn. And of course, over the years, I've done a great deal of work as a consultant with Beef and Lamb New Zealand and being an ambassador, and then being given this title of Platinum Ambassador. Basically, it's sort of a nice way of saying we're just going to put you out into pastures here and allow some of the young ones to come through. But still, it's great to be able to meet up with these young chefs to help mentor them and just share ideas, Been on the floor a long time, and you gain a lot of skill and knowledge in that time. It's nice to be able to pass it on. But over the last couple of years, I've actually moved out of the kitchen and now working as a brand ambassador and taking care of all the sales and marketing for the Crushley family, who have got a sheep station in the Maniatoto at Kyburn Diggings, or at Kyburn, and I've been selling this lamb up and down the country to chefs. It's special lamb. Basically, the lambs are raised on regenerative pastures, and that's a great story to be able to bring to chefs up and down the country.
I've got a lot of questions for you, Michael, but firstly, before we get into the important fundamentals when to arming chefs with that story, I firstly just want to focus on the news of the day. Lamb Shanks has taken it out. Now, back when when I was a child, I remember my father saying, how on earth are these people thinking that they can get money for selling shanks? All they're good for is the dogs. And now merino lamb shanks that our dogs got the pleasure of are just absolutely, pride and place on restaurant menus around this country. You've seen a lot of shift.
Yeah, you wouldn't be feeding the dogs anymore, not at the price that they're commanding. And look, I'm really thrilled today when Lisa from New Zealand Beef and Lamb sort of, contacted me and said, the lamb shanks are taking it out, because over the last couple of years, my responsibility now is to sell the whole sheep to chefs, broken down into pieces. And the problem we've got here is that chefs want to use the shank, they want, the French rack, they want to use the strip loin, they want to use the rump, and they only equate to, a French rack's about 5% of the weight of a clean carcass. So all of those, what I regard as second-tier cuts, like the leg and the shoulder and the shank and the belly, are proving a little bit harder. So, but I think times are changing, and I think especially with this lockdown and restaurants being stifled a little bit with being able to trade, they're revisiting and re-looking at these kind of cuts to see whether they can actually get better yields, get better returns. Protein on a plate doesn't have to be incredibly expensive. You can actually do an incredibly satisfying meal with these cheaper proteins.
So back to the question before there around the shift of the story that a chef or a waitress can sell over the fundamentals of it tasting amazing. Have you seen that shift in balance of what these processors and meat marketers need to provide to the food service industry over your time as a chef?
I think that, as I said, I think the education process on these using these other cuts is a really important part. And I think as we go on in time, one of the things with the lamb shank especially is that it's very linear in its use. You either braise it until it's falling off the bone and serve it with a different series of sauces. But there are different things that you can do to it, and it's just a matter of getting the younger generation of chefs starting to step back a little bit and look at it and think, how can I recreate this? Because they're so good at doing that with everything else that they do in their restaurants and in their kitchens.
And how do we be able to tell the story that not all lamb is equal?
One of the things, and this is what engaged me with meeting up with David originally 3 years ago when I first started working for the farm, was the story about the farming process. We're all sort of very familiar with the fact that our cattle and our lambs are raised on grass, but to me, I just sort of felt like we needed more of a story. Being able to pinpoint and have that traceability back to the farm is an incredibly important thing. We have this new wave of chefs there that are going out. It's very trendy now to sort of go out and to forage and to spend more time with your producers, talking to the producers. And I thought in my time as a chef in the kitchen that I had a very good relationship with my producers and my suppliers, but not to the degree that I think the younger chefs now demand and command. And therefore, I think the story has got to be very, very thorough. You've got to be able to dig down deep and be able to not so much prove the claims, but be able to make those claims readily available. And that's about, as I said, we're so used to the producers sort of saying, it's grass fed, and that's great. We all produce and we all raise on grass, but that narrative is changing now. Is how are we treating our grass? How are we looking after the soil? And I think that part of the story added back to the produce and being able to try. And I know with the lamb that I'm selling, I get really excited being able to pass this on to chefs because I know the eating quality, the marbling, and the texture of this, along with the breeding and David's hand selection of these animals, makes a huge difference to the eating experience.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. It's Beef and Lamb's Platinum Ambassador Chef, Michael Coughlin, who always enjoy catching up with, an extremely experienced man when it comes to the marketing of our finest premium red meat from New Zealand around the world.
This is Sarah's Country.